take us back into the history of her island. Her career is deeply connected to the history of Cuba. This Caribbean island, which is associated to the warm rhythm of salsa, the dominoes, the sweetness of life in the sun, but also to a brutal and painful history which has left its mark on the historical and heritage of its people. The story of that singer has been marked by the weight of that history. Her destiny led her to become a legend and a symbol of what Cuban music is, but also a symbol of the choice of artistic freedom. She still embodies for many people what Cuban, Latin and tropical music are. She is the Queen of Salsa. Her name is Celia Cruz. Hi everyone, I'm back today and I'm really excited because I've really missed it, but I was really busy, but I'm back on track, I promise. So today I'm back with the name and the story of an artist who really had an incredibly strong impact on Cuban music. You would have guessed her name is Celia Cruz. But before we dive into any further details about this video, you really need to know that this video has put me out of my comfort zone because I don't speak Spanish anymore. I used to be very good in Spanish, but when I was doing my GCSE, but since then I haven't talked Spanish at all. In all the videos about Celia Cruz, apart from one which was just about a specific part of her life, everything else was in Spanish. So I really had to dig out and go back into my Spanish memories basically to make that video. So I really hope that I'm going to do justice to that incredible artist. And you need to know that Celia is not just called Celia or Cruz. I hope you're ready. Her full name is Ursula Hilaria Celia Caridad de la Santísima Trinidad Cruz Alfonso. Celia was born on the 23rd of October 1925 in the neighborhood of Santos Suarez, which is in La Havana. And her birth is surrounded by a myth because Celia is part of a family of 4 siblings, and one of her sisters, Dolores, had a baby girl before Celia was born. But what happened is that unfortunately, soon after she was born, that baby girl will die. And when she passed away, her little finger was in this position. And when Celia was born, her little finger was also in that same position. So for her family, this was definitely a sign that Celia was the reincarnation of that little girl, but also that she would bring something absolutely exceptional for her family. So Celia was born in the neighborhood of Santos Suarez, and she has been surrounded by the love of her parents, Simon Cruz and Catalina Alfonso, as well as her sisters, Dolores, Gladys, and her brother, Barbaro. So Celia grew up in the neighborhood of Santos Suarez, and inevitably she's going to be surrounded by music. And from the very young age, she was already singing. And one of her sisters said that even before she could actually talk, she was already singing. So even if her dad was not really keen on accepting the fact that she was doing lots of singing, she's going to start singing for tourists. And what's going to happen is that one day she's going to be singing for a tourist and he's going to absolutely love her voice. So he's going to give her a pair of shoes. And I'm telling you this because she was extremely young, but she already had something very special that attracted people towards her, and her talent was already recognized by people even from the very young age. And her talent for singing and for music, generally speaking, is something that she's going to develop over time with the support of her mum. But Celia will not only be supported by her mum, she's also going to be supported by one of her teachers, and what her teacher will tell her will have an absolutely exceptional impact on her life and really going to shift the direction that she's going to give to her life. Because her sister will tell her that because of the socio-economical situation for women and for black women at the time in La Havana, she's better off going that track that she wanted to take because she really wanted to become a teacher, but she's going to tell her, you've got so much talent, so you would better be off doing this teaching studies and focus on music because you could definitely succeed in that. So she actually going to follow the advice that her teacher will give her, and she's going to start studying in the National Music School of La Habana in 1947. And the fact that Celia started to go in lots of TV and radio program will start to make her having a name in the music industry, and the very first music collaboration that she's going to have will be with a female music group which is called Las Mulatas de Fuego. So in 1940 she's going to join the band, and it's going to be her very first opportunity to perform both in Cuba and in South America as well. So it's going to be a great opportunity for her to show all her music and singing talent, because the group Las Mulatas de Fuego was exclusively dancers, so she was the singer and they were the dancers. But it is 3 years after starting her studies in the National Music School of La Habana that she's going to start working in a band that will absolutely transform her life on a personal level, but also in her entire music career. So in 1950, she's going to meet a man that will absolutely transform her life, because that man was the manager of a band called Orquestra Sonora Matancera, and that man is called Alberto Sotolongo. And at the time, he was looking for a female lead singer, so he's going to ask her if she's interested in joining the band, which she will accept. So she's going to start becoming the actual representation of the band Sonora Matancera. And the fact that she accepted will absolutely transform her life. So while becoming the lead singer of the band, she's going to have the opportunity to do lots of concerts in Cuba, and progressively she's going to start to touch the heart of the people from Cuba, and progressively she's going to become an absolute legend of music in her country. 1960 is a very important year, both because in that year, Celia has been to Mexico with the band Sonora Matancera for a performance, but it's also a very important year for the history of Cuba, because it was during that year that the revolution was at its highest peak. And what's going to happen is that this year will absolutely transform the life of Cuban people, but it's also going to have extremely strong and irreversible consequences in the life of Celia Cruz. Celia will meet Fidel Castro for the very first time in 1959, which was at the time still a very burning moment for the revolution in Cuba. And she will meet him for the second time in 1960. We're going to see that in a moment, but these two moments when she's going to meet Fidel Castro will definitely shape her future. The very first time when she's going to meet Fidel Castro will be because she accepted to perform for a businessman called Miguel Angel Cabello. And this businessman was the owner of a magazine called Bohemia. And what I need to precise is that Fidel Castro was using this magazine to spread out and share his political opinion. So when she accepted to perform for Miguel Angel Cabello, she didn't know that during that night, Fidel Castro will be also present to see her. So only a few minutes before she actually started to perform, everybody will absolutely rush towards the door, and it was obviously because Fidel Castro just arrived. So he's going to ask Miguel Angel Cabello if Celia could sing the song Burundanga, but she's gonna refuse to sing the song. And she's gonna say, I'm not here to sing for you. I'm here to sing with this pianist, and I'm here to sing for this man, which is Miguel Angel. And she also gonna say, if you want to see me, you should come directly to see me. Obviously, he's not going to go and talk to her directly. So this moment was the very first moment where this bitterness, anger against Celia Cruz started to crystallize. And the second encounter was basically because Celia has been invited, as well as several bands in the city, to perform in the music club called Blanquita, and the poster of this show were everywhere in the city. And it was not just saying that there are going to be several bands, including Celia Cruz. She was on the poster, you could see her face. So obviously, Fidel Castro knew that Celia would be here to perform on that night. So before the show, there was the final repetition with all the different bands that were supposed to perform on that night, including Celia Cruz. And the director of the club told everyone that tonight there would be a very special guest present, and that special guest also asked that Celia sing the song Burundanga, but again, she refused to do it. And the reason that she gave was that she didn't really know the different musicians that were present that night, because it was a show with different artists, different bands, and she said, well, I don't really know them, and we don't know that song together, so we can't do it, basically. So it was an excuse for her not to do it. Obviously, she could do it, but she refused to do it again. And when Fidel Castro arrived on that night, he asked her to come and see him again, but she refused. And at the end of her performance, on the way back to the backstage, the director asked her to go and say hello to Fidel Castro, but she refused. And he said, if you don't go and say hello to him, I'm not paying you. And she said, if you're asking me to put myself on my knee, I prefer to refuse all the money that you want to give me. So this moment will be the second encounter. So it's going to crystallize even more the bitterness that Fidel Castro will have towards Celia Cruz. So as I was explaining earlier, Celia and Sonora Matancera will be able to go to Mexico to perform. But what will happen is that her way to Mexico will unfortunately never allow her back in her home country. So during her stay in Mexico, what's going to happen is that the group of the revolution in Cuba will demand that she's prohibited from coming back in Cuba. And the reason that they're going to give to justify this very aggressive and very violent action is that they're going to say that they see with a very bad eye the fact that any Cuban band, Cuban artist go and have any contract with foreign nations. So in 1962, when she's going to officially go in exile in the US, for her, it's going to be sort of realizing how much this revolution in Cuba is shaping her destiny and shaping the fact that unfortunately this exile will be absolutely much longer than what she was actually expecting. And just like the South African artist Miriam Makeba, Celia Cruz will leave a private tragedy in exile, because unfortunately her mom will pass away when she's going to be in exile, and she's going to ask for a special authorization to go to Cuba for the funerals. But the group of the revolution and Fidel Castro will refuse this. So it sort of again symbolized this rivalry, this war between Celia Cruz and Fidel Castro. Even if starting from 1960, the American government has been very keen on accepting the presence of Cuban refugees, when it came to Celia Cruz, they've been very suspicious, And they didn't see with a very good eyes the fact that such an influential artist from Cuba would be in the American territory. And the man who was actually the very first director of the FBI did sort of a witch hunt because he started to try to collect lots of evidence that Celia Cruz was in reality not just someone who was looking for a place where she could be free, but was actually a Cuban spy. Obviously, he didn't find any proof. And one of the things that Celia has been doing to sort of justify the fact that she was absolutely not a spy is that she started to give lots of money and financial support to all of the anti-Fidel Castro movement, especially the one in Miami. And the fact that he's been doing so many research against Celia Cruz unfortunately had the consequence that her visa has been refused twice, and it's only been in 1965 that she officially could have the right to remain in the country and be in political exile. And one of the consequences of her having the right to remain in America was that even if she was extremely popular in Cuba, her music and the production of her music will be cancelled and censored in Cuba for a very long time. And even if she was very popular in Cuba, the fact that her music was prohibited was also a way to symbolize that she embodied both America and a movement anti-Fidel Castro. But it is thanks to the US that Celia Cruz will be able to consolidate her career and becoming a symbol of both Latin and Cuban music, both in America but also throughout the world. And you might think that when Celia started her music career, she started her music career in Miami because we obviously know that there is a big Cuban community in Miami, but it's not the case. She started her music career in New York City. And when she's going to arrive in New York City, what's going to happen is that she's going to start working with a band which is both a music label as well as a music band. And this band is called Fania All Stars. And when she arrived in the scene, she sort of managed to embody and to gather music from the Spanish community, because at the time they didn't really have someone who was really embodying and gathering at the same time the language, the rhythm, all the different aspects of Latin music basically, and she became that woman. And she sort of managed to become the equation that would gather both the singing, the dancing, and the language, because at the time there was not really anyone who could really gather all these little symbols of the Latin music. So at the time, she really managed to open the door for this Latin music in America, in the Latin community, but also anywhere in the world. And when you look at all the pictures and the videos of Celia Cruz, what you see is a unique style, a very specific presence in the scene, and all of that managed to create, which really enabled Latin music to be represented by someone absolutely exceptional. And it is for that reason that she managed to become extremely popular within the Latin community and embody what Latin music is in America. And if you look at the outfit that she was also wearing when she was on stage, it also became part of this absolutely icon that she has been. And it's also the case for her shoes. For those who don't know, the type of shoes that she was wearing at the time, someone asked her why she kept wearing these shoes, and she actually said, "I absolutely love these shoes. I know they're not very comfortable, but I love to wear them, especially on stage. And these shoes are now really a symbol of what Celia Cruz has been, what she really embodied in terms of style, and is part of her legend." And nowadays, you might have seen these shoes during fashion show or you might as well be wearing these shoes yourself, but it's really something that symbolize all the beautiful and eccentric style of Celia Cruz. But it is not the only thing that symbolized Celia Cruz's legend. She also had a little Barbie doll, and it is also something that is part of this cultural identity. And I would say that it is something even more important in terms of identity and cultural identity, because for the very first time, lots of black little girls, both in Cuba, but also in the Latin community and the black community generally speaking, could see a very successful black woman and could see themselves through her. So it's also something extremely powerful that Celia left behind. And Celia Cruz had also been an example for the African community during an event that I've mentioned in the video of Taboulé Rochereau, Sam Mangwana, as well as Abeti Masikini. It is the fight between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. And this moment was something absolutely exceptional because she could share with the African public what the Cuban music has been. And it's all the more interesting because this event was in Zaire. And if you do not know, but the Congolese rumba takes its origin in the Cuban music. So it's all the more interesting to see how she managed to share that music with the African public at the time. And her song like La Vida es un Carnaval, Vive y Llorar, Guantanamera, or the song Always Survive from Gloria Gaynor that she's done in Spanish, or really testifying of the discography legacy that she left us, but also symbolize how popular Celia Cruz is still nowadays. So the entire music world of Celia is really shaped around salsa, around Latin music, as well as being a symbol of the culture of Cuba and its people, even if she was not allowed in her country. And you might already know, but she was extremely famous for saying the word AZUCAR, which means sugar. It all started because she was once in a restaurant in Miami with her friends, and the waiter asked her how she liked to have her coffee, and she said, "No, chico, tú eres cubano y sabes que el café de nosotros es muy amargo, con azúcar, viejo, con azúcar." Which means, you're from Cuba, right? So you do know that our coffee is extremely bitter. So with sugar, please, with sugar. That's what it means. And it's a little joke that she's made to that young boy, but at the same time, it's been something that was really symbolizing something very strong, because she couldn't be physically present in her country, but saying to the world azúcar was her way of saying how much she remained someone from Cuba, even if she couldn't be physically present in their country. And it was also reminding about the history of Cuba, because of how slave black people in Cuba had to work in those sugar plantations. So it was really a cultural way of reminding the world how much she was a person from Cuba, and reminding as well to Cuban people that she remained Cuban even if she wasn't present physically in the island.
¡Azúcar!
¡Azúcar!
¡Azúcar! ¡Azúcar!
And one of the things you need to know about Celia Cruz is that she absolutely loved to perform and being on the stage. It was almost something vital for the artist. But unfortunately, what's going to happen is that in 2002, she's officially going to announce that she's sick. She was suffering from a cancer. But she also said that she still wanted to perform because it was something extremely important for her.
Toda la vida cantando, toda la vida gozando, y ahora me cogió eso. Pero hoy ustedes me han dado tanto deseo de seguir cantando que no lo pude hacer, pero sí lo voy a hacer.
So she's going to have a first operation, and it looked like she was recovering from this. But unfortunately, her very last public moment was in March 2003, And this moment was a very beautiful symbolic moment because this was an event to celebrate the positive impact of Hispanic artists in America. But unfortunately, on the 16th of July 2003, she's unfortunately going to pass away from the cerebral cancer that she was suffering through. To know is that at the time, the tribute that has been given for Celia Cruz has been absolutely exceptional. And the ceremony has been in two specific locations. It was both in the St. Patrick Cathedral in New York City, as well as being in La Torre de la Libertad in Miami, which has been a very symbolic place for Cuban people in exile. And seeing all these avenues in New York City absolutely overcrowded with people ready to give the very last tribute to Celia Cruz has been a very moving and very strong testimony of the popularity of Celia Cruz in America. And it really testified and symbolized how Celia Cruz has been extremely popular and important for the Latin community, the Hispanic community, for the Cuban diaspora, but also for the American public. And what you need to know is that symbolically, Celia Cruz is resting both in Guantanamo, so that she's sort of symbolically closer to her homeland, to Cuba, and she's also resting in a crypt in New Jersey. Obviously, with such a popularity and influence, when she passed away, Celia Cruz left behind her a really important financial legacy. And what you need to know is that the only person who had access to this legacy is Pedro Knight. Pedro Knight was Celia Cruz's husband, but he also been one of the musicians from the band Sonora Matancera, which was the band when she started to become an absolute star. And I'm mentioning this because there's lots of controversy around this will and the fact that she potentially signed this will when she started to be ill. But I cannot talk in much further details about this because I do not have enough details. Again, the video I found were in Spanish, so I don't want to say something that is not right. But I did see, and I thought that was really sad, that one of her sisters, Dolores, that I've mentioned at the very beginning of the video, when she passed away, she actually passed away in extreme poverty. And I thought that was something really sad, knowing how her sister, who's been financially thriving, years later, she couldn't really benefit from this, and I thought that was an extremely sad situation. Other than this financial legacy, Celia Cruz left behind her a huge musical, cultural, identity legacy, and what really makes me think that she really managed to leave something absolutely exceptional and that will remain forever is this. A music school has Celia Cruz's name. She received 4 Grammy Awards, including the Life Achievement Award. She's been mentioned 3 times in the American Billboard. 4 official biographies still available nowadays. She has several streets on her name. She has lots of shopping centers in her name, including one in Tenerife, one in Miami, one in Houston, one in Los Angeles, as well as one in New York City. There is also a musical called La Vie Musicale de Celia. There's also stamps with her name and her face on it. Isn't this amazing? Jennifer Lopez paid an amazing tribute to Celia Cruz during one of the American Music Awards session in 2013. And very recently, in February, she's made history while becoming the very first Afro-Hispanic artist to have her face on the 25th cent dollars in America. And if I'm mentioning this at the very end, it is because it's not a details, it's absolutely symbolic of the incredible impact of Celia Cruz in America, but also throughout the world, because she managed to embody what Latin tropical music, what salsa music is, and I'm pleased to have shared her name with you. I really hope that her story inspired you. She personally really inspires me because for me, she really symbolized the choice of choosing liberty and artistic liberty when political situation, and the environment, generally speaking, is not giving you that freedom. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this story, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you.